Steam Deck clones are a dime a dozen these days. You can't go 5 minutes without some random tech website showing off a new one. And the crazy thing is, quite a few of them look to be worthy competitors to the almighty Steam Deck. But that's what's going on now. After all, the Steam Deck came out in 2022. I want to go back to 2015, before the days of new Steam Deck competitors every month, and not long after the world was introduced to Steam machines. Remember those lead balloons? Yep, today I want to talk about one of the first major movements within the world of handheld Steam-injected gaming devices that unfortunately was also one of the biggest scams from this now no longer niche field. This is the Smach Z scandal, and in order to tell the full scandalous story, we need to go back to the beginning, back to December 9th, 2015. But before going ahead, here's a quick word from this video's sponsor, Trainwell. Isn't it time you got down the gym? I mean, yeah, but it's time and effort, isn't it? Of course, getting a personal trainer is a great way to build up that encouragement, but then you've got new issues, the cost and the working around each other's timetables. Thankfully, today's sponsor, Trainwell, completely alleviates all of these issues. It's not just another fitness app that tells you what to do, it's a one-on-one service that's completely tailored to your ability, your needs and your time to help achieve your personal goals. This is how it works. After having my introduction call with my personal trainer, a real personal trainer, not a computer, I explained what I wanted to achieve, how much time I had to do it, and how often I wanted to work out. And from that, Terence here gave me a list of exercises based on my requirements. I then went down the gym and got to work. The multi-angled videos helped showcase the sort of exercises I needed to do and how to do them. And with the help of AI, Terence's own voice is replicated talking me through my workout session. And when I changed the weights or the reps, Terence's voice automatically updated and I could continue my session with ease. Plus, after my first session, which was a little bit too weights heavy, I gave my feedback to Terence and he updated all my future workouts to include a lot more cardio. This is such a tailored experience. Simply put, Trainwell, formerly known as Copilot, is a fantastic and more importantly a personal experience that's tailored to you. For the last couple of weeks I've been using this service myself, I've very much enjoyed it, and if you guys want to check it out yourself completely for free, there's a 14-day trial. Go click the link in the description to do that very thing. We all know that fitness should be something that is a part of our lives. For me, the best thing about Trainwell is that it knocks down the barriers that I've been putting up, stopping me from becoming a healthier individual. So again, guys, if you want to try out Trainwell the same way I have for the last couple of weeks, then go and click that link in the description, get yourself a free 14-day trial, and yeah, go and do that thing. Anyway, guys, thanks for checking out the sponsorship. Let's get back to the video. Here we are, back when the Smach team launched their first ever Kickstarter, Smach Z, the handheld PC, play your PC games everywhere Kickstarter campaign. Except, of course, this wasn't the first time we saw this device. Notice how the campaign has all this jargon front and center about how the Steam name and logo are property of Valve and that Smach Z is not connected and that the Smach Z is not an official Steam machine and that Valve is not developing the handheld, yada yada yada. Well, you might think that this is all just legal gumph, and you know what, it kind of is. But the reason it's front and center like this is because the Smach Z was actually shown off a year prior with an almost identical dubstep infused cinematic trailer on their own website where it was dubbed the Steam Boy. Get it? Steam Machine? Game Boy? They're not stupid, are they? No, they are. Because they obviously didn't get permission to do any of this. Still, it got their name out there before they were presumably forced to change it, right? Yep, plenty of news publications started spreading the word of what looked like a new official Steam product, and for whatever reason, it was The Escapist that got the most information regarding the specs.
The escapist has received additional info from the Steam Boy machine team. While the exact hardware itself is still under wraps, the Steam Boy design should feature a quad-core CPU, 4GB RAM, a 32GB built-in memory card, and a 5-inch 16:9 touchscreen.
Steam Boy won't be as powerful as other announced Steam machines, in the same way the Nintendo 3DS or PS Vita performance is not comparable to Wii U or PlayStation 4. However, it will be possible to play the majority of current games in Steam.
Now, it's quite easy to sit here with hindsight and laugh at all of those people that were falling for this quite blatant misinformation. However, you've got to put yourself in the mind of a gamer from 2014 to 2015. Because as stupid as this may sound, the Steam Boy was actually kind of believable. Pretty much everyone who even had a passing interest in PC gaming and handheld gaming, which was still very popular at the time, was excited about Steam's Steam machines. And it's these machines that gave the Steam Boy some credibility. Because unlike the Steam Deck, Valve didn't really have much to do with the making of the Steam machines. They were made by third-party companies. Steam just made the operating system, with the only real entry barrier being some minimum specs put forward by Valve. And sure, even though this turned people off of the idea of Steam machines because they were originally expecting a standalone console to go alongside their PlayStations and Xboxes, myself included, these Steam machines were still officially licensed Steam products. They were just simply made by other companies. So with that in mind, unless you was following every single bit of news out there, you may be mistaken into thinking that this is an official Steam machine, and arguably the best looking one.
So I think that's basically the same as any other Steam box. Like, I think this is literally just a Steam machine, but portable. Literally just a Steam machine. Literally just a Steam machine. Literally just a Steam machine, but portable.
Also, let's not forget that it had the same unique button layout to Steam's very own official Steam controller. Although they do add some magic Z pads too for people that wanted to add squishy buttons to the touchpads. Remember when the Amico wanted to do the same thing? But hey, regardless of all of that, the Steam Boy Machine team, that some news publications were calling them, didn't have the correct permission, hence that disclaimer on the Kickstarter. And that's why they created a new name for the Kickstarter campaign. Simply put, the Steam Boy was the Smach Z. In fact, that's where the name came from. It's not Smach Z, it's Smach Z. The S from Steam, the mash from machine, Smach Z. Although, because it's European, shouldn't it be Smach Z? I don't know, it doesn't matter, call it what you want. Anyway, thanks to a Thunderclap campaign in those earlier days, the Smach Z was doing quite well. And in case you don't know what Thunderclap was, it's a now defunct social funding platform that Smach Z used to collect together people who wanted to help spread the word of this Kickstarter. It worked the same way as other crowdfunding sites, but instead of a money target, they had a people who wanted to help spread the word target. If you like what a company, a charity, an organisation, or whoever was chatting about, and you wanted to help them spread the word, you would sign up, and if enough other people did the same thing, by the time that the timer counts down, an automatic tweet or Facebook post would be sent out from your social media platforms of choice to all of your followers, saying,
"Whoa! Hashtag Smach Z is the first handheld console to play Steam games on the go. Check it out. It's amazing. http://thnDR.me/L_D_XVFA.
And then, of course, that link would direct people to the Kickstarter campaign. It was a crazy and now, like I said, long defunct social media marketing tool that was used by loads of Kickstarters and politicians back in the day. That was until all the social media giants blocked its integration, and that was the end of that. Still, it did what it needed to do. It got eyes on the Kickstarter, but sadly, not enough, because it didn't hit target. 8 days in, and it was becoming painfully obvious that the campaign was just never gonna hit target. You had daily updates reminding people that they're not associated with Valve. Okay, we get it. before we had an entire wall of excuses talking about the failure of the campaign, including the goal being too high, the system not coming with Windows installed, something the comments section was constantly asking for, and the most obvious one, the pledges had slowed down. In fact, they'd practically stopped. All valid reasons for a campaign to close down, I'm sure you will all agree. However, it's only when you open up the Google form exit questionnaire that they put out that you start to understand the real reason why this campaign closed down. Several times in said form, they bring up the possibility of moving to Indiegogo, whilst hammering home the fact that they do not have a working prototype yet. Why is this important? Well, for a campaign like this, Kickstarter requires a prototype before you go live with the campaign. Indiegogo doesn't, as long as you put down that it's still in the idea phase. Thankfully for them, they did come back on October 18th, 2016 with the second campaign on Kickstarter, and this time they came back with a prototype in hand. And when I say prototype, what I actually mean is a mess of images showing them trying to build something, and a load of excitable gamers from Gamescom praising the system beyond all recognition as they play Castle Crashers of all things on the device. We get more information about the specs, further confirmation that the device is a prototype with the final version being thinner, but possibly most interesting of all is the fact that the device will feature click arm technology. Wait. What the hell is click arm technology, I hear you ask? Well, not long before the release of this campaign, another short-lived craze was all the rage, called modular technology, most remembered within Google's very own Project Ara concept. And for those that don't remember what that was, it was essentially the skeleton of something like a mobile phone, where you buy small modules that would individually upgrade your camera, your battery, your screen, your RAM, your storage, all that good stuff, as opposed to buying a whole new device. It was essentially turning your phone into Trigger's broom. Something for the UK listeners there, let me know down below if you get that reference. And yes, even though the idea of modular mobile phones would eventually die off simply because the vast majority of users only really cared about updating the battery and the storage, which a lot of phones for the time already allowed you to do, the Smach Z team still pushed this concept known in their campaign video as Click Advanced Removable Modules. And the reason for this was because they were working with another company to create the board that included this click arm technology. And guys, not to break up this timeline any more than I already have, but just so we're on the same page, that other company was ImasD, who were previously responsible for the Click Arm 1, a modular tablet, and the Puzzle Phone, which, wasn't officially put out by them, but did use the same Click Arm technology. One was crowdfunded by Indiegogo and raised $116,005, and the other was a pre-order of only 1,000 units on their own website. And you guessed it, neither of these got shipped out, supposedly due to a legal dispute with a company called, wait for it, Arm, who had absolutely nothing to do with Click Arm. It's the whole Steam Boys Steam Machine issue all over again. Anyway, the reason I bring all of this up is to better illustrate the kind of people that were working on the Smach Z prototype. So, let's make sure we're all up to date. The Smach Z team was the company in charge of the campaign that consisted of 4 game developers who had the incredible idea of making a portable Steam machine, and the ImasD team were the ones responsible for the prototype, or as they like to put it, the proof of concept that included that click arm technology. And just to make it a little bit more complicated, ImasD eventually renamed ClickArm to Romb.io, pronounced by many as Rombio, which is now how I will refer to them for the remainder of this video. So, in short, TLDR, the Smach team were the guys that came up with the idea, and the Rombio team were the ones that delivered. Did they Potential backers of the Smach Z's second campaign could see the prototype in all of its wiry glory on the front page of the campaign and in those early updates too, including the camera and whatnot. We also got to see detailed bios of the people who were working on the prototype too, more footage of people playing with the prototype and the system playing some more graphically intensive titles as well. We get to see Windows working on the system and even the ability to load up RetroArch, which, let's not kid ourselves, was a major selling point for a device like this. In fact, they heavily promoted emulation on the front page. Limited edition zombie-themed Smach Z's and golden Smach Z's. We got community-supported updates, which resulted in updates to the screen resolution. And finally, the stretch goals went a bit OTT, with the possibility of the Smach Z getting mobile phone support included, if they got enough money, that is. Which they didn't. Still, they did reach their newer, more humble goal of 250,000 euros, which is significantly less than the 900,000 they were asking first time around, when 1,293 backers got it up to just under 500,000 euros. Yeah, that took so many takes. And as soon as that Kickstarter was funded, an Indiegogo in-demand campaign came out instantly after, where the team made an extra $744,710. Yes, dollars, not euros, dollars. Now, this part really did confuse me for quite some time. Not because the currencies are different, but more so because the figures on both of these campaigns were different. The figure you see get thrown around by people covering this is that the combined figure is the amount they walked away with. However, I'm here to tell you that that's not how this works. And just to be doubly sure, I recently spoke to a friend of the channel, Oliver Harper, who also previously had a Kickstarter and an Indiegogo shortly after, and he confirmed that the amount you see on the Indiegogo campaign, which again came after, should be the total amount raised as opposed to an additional amount raised. In other words, Oliver Harper, who had two campaigns, raised 99,000, which is the amount you see on the Indiegogo campaign in total. And just to make sure everyone's clear, this guy hasn't scammed anyone. The movies he's made via Kickstarter and Indiegogo are both very, very good. If you're into your 80s action films and you're into Street Fighter 2 specifically, go and check out his two documentaries on these. They are fantastic, and you may even see myself and my son in the Street Fighter 2 documentary. Links down below. So, in short, even though I've seen many people that have covered this combining these two figures together, I'm here to tell you, the comment section, that no, the figure you see on the Indiegogo is in fact the total amount raised through both of these campaigns combined. In other words, it's $744,710 raised in total over two campaigns by 1,293 backers. Right. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about the YouTuber Stop, Drop and Retro, shall we? Now, for those that don't know Stop, Drop and Retro, it's a channel that, among other things, has a history of calling out scammers. Crowdfunding scammers, to be more specific, and to be even more specific than that, the Smach Z scam specifically. Yes, it's obviously going to be a scam, come on, it's really not a spoiler alert at this point, is it? Well, in Stop, Drop and Retro's first ever video covering the campaign, he is the one that is deserving of the credit for showcasing Smach Z's biggest red flag to date. As of July 10th, 2017, his upload shows that several updates from the campaign that features Pedro David Peleas, aka Rombio's hardware director's breakdown of the console prototype / proof of concept in more detail. And in that very upload, he discovers that in the top right corner of one of these breakdowns is a circuit board that has been ripped from a Windows Lynx tablet. Yep. This tablet right here, this Lynx tablet is, well, it's my own personal tablet. I've had this one for years. It won't properly charge anymore. It lasts about 5 minutes and yeah, it doesn't really work. The circuit board inside this Lynx tablet is what is inside the Smach Z. It turns out that the folks over at Rombio, with all of their engineering experience, all their backers' money, and their grant money, I'd like to add, literally just ripped the innards of an extremely cheap tablet and squeezed it into a 3D printed case. But that's not all. According to several other updates and replies in the comments section now that this device runs Windows, guess what else they confirmed? They confirmed that this Windows-powered system would show up in the control panel as a bloody Steam controller. Why? Because it's a bloody Steam controller, cut in half with a Lynx tablet circuit board duct taped in the middle and a 5-inch screen slapped on top. Oh, and this would eventually be confirmed when leaked prototypes found their way online. It was literally a cut-up Steam controller.
They're the same picture.
Around the same time that this video was released, Ronbio decided to cut ties with the Smash team, as showcased in a now-deleted blog post. They explained in fairly broken English, remember, everyone's based in Spain here, that the two companies butt heads quite a bit, going as far as to say,
based on our experience developing/making products, we consider that Smach Z has not been able to understand or value the complexity of development and fabrication that this kind of product implies, regarding to the technical and economic matters. For these reasons, after several disagreements and long pauses during this project, unconnected to Ronbio, both parts have decided to dissolve cooperation.
Yeah, like I said, English isn't their first language. Either way, after a couple more updates, they confirmed that they didn't receive any money from these crowdfunded campaigns and that the Smash team could still use their custom chips if they wanted. It's just that Ronbio themselves are not going to help them make it. Shortly after this, a Reddit Ask Me Anything was scheduled with Pedro, the head of the Ronbio team, but not before Smach Z responded confirming that a new technical team would be implemented working directly with the Smash team, this time for greater communication, and that modular technology would still be a thing. But of course, as everything would now need to be redone from scratch, a delay is most definitely on the cards. However, never fear, because the Pebble, Oculus Rift and Touch Time all got delayed too, so yeah, get over it. Right, let's go look at that Reddit AMA with the Ronbio guys, shall we?
Hello, Mr. Perlez. If you could design any device you wanted, but it had to include a 5-inch screen, a Steam controller, and a Lynx 10 tablet, what would you make?
So, was the Smach Z prototype just a Lynx tablet board with a different screen and a Steam controller attached?
Yeah, it was a bit of a show, quite frankly, and honestly very little got discussed, presumably because of that language barrier. They did eventually answer the claims against them, denying that they are not using the innards of a Lynx tablet. They had a history of making their own, so why would they use other people's? And they said that they would only send over the final documents to the Smash team when the final invoice is paid. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's pretty obvious to all involved that this whole Reddit AMA happened because of that YouTuber Stop, Drop and Retro getting under Ronbio's skin, and after the head honcho Pedro himself outright denied that this was a Lynx tablet motherboard and camera, I'd like to add, the Smash team decided to prove the annoying YouTuber wrong by opening up the board and showing it on their own, now shut down, Smach Z forums. Which just confirmed that it was a Windows Lynx tablet all along. Perhaps they too were unaware of this, who knows? Either way, it proved that this was nothing more than a ripped up board from a Lynx tablet or otherwise, and a whole heap of yellow tape and very little else. As you would expect, Stop Drop was ecstatic that his theory was correct all along. He went to Twitter to showcase his findings and to further question Pedro, who went on a meltdown, kicking off at the YouTuber, further proving that yes, this was an off-the-shelf tablet board, although he claimed to get it from another device. Regardless of where he got it from, it's not a custom board, is it, mate? And then, all of a sudden, this very picture that the Smach Z team themselves had posted on their own forums, that then Stop, Drop and Retro had reposted over on Twitter, was then forcefully taken down by the Smach Z team. The Smach Z team had sent a DMCA to Stop, Drop and Retro for posting a tweet of a picture that they posted themselves.
That's true.
With every passing moment, this whole debacle was getting more and more shady. And look, I know I said it already, but Stop, Drop and Retro is fully deserving of bringing this information to the masses, and even though nobody has done a full breakdown of this whole mess, hence why you're watching this very video, I cannot suggest checking out his several videos on this scandal enough, as it's super interesting to see how it all played out in real time. And it's even more exciting when you discover that the Smach Z team themselves also tried to take those videos down too. Continuing on with our sad but true story. The rest of the updates in this video will be done in a timeline fashion to give you the best possible vision of what it was like to follow and support this train wreck at the time. However, unlike previous Kickscammer videos like the Amico and the VEGA Plus, this one isn't as easy to compile. You see, backers who wanted updates were included into a sort of secret forum that gave out these exclusive updates. Sure, that's fine to a degree, plenty of campaigns do similar things, however, in this instance, each backer was struck with a definitely not legally binding non-disclosure agreement. If any backer out there was found discussing these updates publicly on Discord or on Reddit, the post would be instantly deleted by the Smach simps, and that user would be instantly banned and unable to get further updates moving forward. It was the perfect way to not spread the information too far outside of their most loyal and hardcore backers, who would then take down anyone who ever questioned the almighty Smach Z gods. And now, with the closure of that website that hosted the backers only updated forums, to the best of my ability, this is how it all went down. As you've no doubt already worked out, the Smach Z system was shown off at quite a few gaming conventions, and it would continue to do so for the next few years. In August of 2016, it was shown at Gamescom in Germany, where the system suffered from some pretty hardcore lag playing games such as Fez. Not exactly a graphically intensive game, although they claimed that it was driver issues, and that when they moved to an updated chip, that all of these issues would be fixed. On Kickstarter, they stated the following.
It's true that during the Gamescom we had technical problems that made that only small games were running good, but this was fixed. The problem was with the energy of the device, not with the cooling. October 28th, there's another trade show in Madrid, and we will bring the prototypes there too, if you want to come.
Before then, the previously rumoured NX would be announced in October as the now-known Nintendo Switch, and then at the Madrid show we got to see people playing with the Smach Z device on their YouTube channels, and yep, it still looked pretty damn laggy. Back over on Kickstarter, we got another update confirming that Nintendo's Dolphin was running on the tablet at 60 frames per second, which was obviously a major selling point for emulation fans. There was no proof of this actually working, of course, no video, nothing like that, but then again, when has that ever stopped the Smach Z team? After that, very little happened that we haven't discussed in detail already for the remainder of the year. For example, in November, you of course had the name change to Rhombio. The second Kickstarter itself was fully funded, before moving to Indiegogo the very next day. Again, you know all of this already, so let's move forward a little bit to March 3rd, 2017. When the Nintendo Switch was released. However, hardcore Smash fans weren't worried about it, as the biggest competitor in their eyes was actually the GPD Win, a system that had already launched and was essentially a very small laptop, as it had the same form factor as a 3DS with controls at the top of the keyboard area. As time went on, more and more YouTubers reviewed the system, and virtually everyone was singing its praises. Besides the Smach simps, obviously. And to be fair to them, if the Smach Z ever did come out as originally intended, it would have blown GPD Win out of the water. And even I will admit that I would prefer the form factor of the Smach Z over the GPD. The only problem was that the Smach Z wasn't released yet, was it? And the GPD Win was. In fact, the GPD Win 2 had already been announced by this point, further rubbing salt into the Smash wounds. Either way, none of this matters, as the very next month was the month that originally the Smach Z was finally going to get released. Finally! But obviously, it wasn't. Since the campaign's completion back in November of 2016 to now, very few updates had come along, and those that were published were locked off to backers. A very, very different approach to the GPD Win team. On top of that, the forum wasn't getting much of any updates privately, instead of being filled up by hardcore supporters, setting up polls to ask what people's favourite colour would be.
Ferrari red for me, please. Vroom, vroom.
In other words, during release month, there was absolutely nothing going on. Thankfully, a month later, it leaked from those forums that a new estimated date for the Smach Z's delivery is going to be between September and October of 2017. Fewer and fewer updates continued to pop up on both Kickstarter and the forums, and backers begin to get more and more worried as the previously mentioned Rombio split becomes common knowledge, and backers begin sharing YouTubers who are all pretty much collectively calling this out as a mismanaged project at best and a scam at worst.
So at this point, if you're a backer, you pretty much have to just hope that something gets figured out here by this team and that it comes out, but it doesn't look good.
Aunque para expertos en la materia, esto es más que obvio que ha sido una gran estafa de más de $500,000.
They're going to run out of money and go defunct, which is probably a likely scenario. Scenario 2 is that they ship some piece of junk from the Chinese manufacturer that gets them something to deliver to backers so they can't say they were ripped off, and the company will go out of business the day after the last piece gets shipped out.
And just when you think it can't get any worse, we finally get confirmation as to how much the Smach Z team paid Rombio for the prototype, proof of concept, whatever you want to call it. Either way, if this is true, then they got sent down that garden path way more than any backer. 80,000 euros for a cut-up Lynx tablet, Steam controller, 5-inch screen and a 3D printed case. Now look, I'm not saying I can do what Rombio did. They've obviously released products in the past, as stated. However, give me 80k and I could probably cut up a Steam controller and slap in a Lynx tablet for you as well. Again, we really only have Smach Z's word on this, but damn, that's an insane amount of money for what they got. And it just goes to show that this whole project up to this point is nothing more than a cool idea bodged together by a company that really should have been able to provide a whole lot more. Also, before moving on, it's worth pointing out that they claim to have paid all the invoices, which again, we really only have their word to go on when it comes to this. As the last we heard from Rombio, they hadn't. Honestly, I don't have the answer here. Make up your own mind, because either way, it doesn't change the end result. And finally, before moving on, notice the plus 200k? What's that about? Well, from my understanding, a legal battle was now going on between the two companies at this point, resulting in the Smach Z team losing potentially 280,000 euros in total for this. And again, if this is true, then Rombio really are just as bad, if not worse, than the idea men over at Smach Z. They knew they had a bunch of guys that wanted to throw every idea at the wall with a crap ton of crowdfunding money behind them. They took it and they delivered a prototype or a proof of concept, whatever, that was far less than what was expected of them. Hence why Rombio referred to this as a proof of concept. They also confirmed this themselves in that very update. Moving into December, it's leaked into the comments that the new estimated shipping date is now May of 2018. And at some point, the Smach Z team posted an update either on the Kickstarter as a hidden update or in the forums that the reason Rombio left was because of the scam videos that had started to surface.
Hello everyone.
Uh-oh, it's another year and still no Smash devices in sight. And you know what else? Time to rub even more salt into the wounds, because that GPD Win 2 just made its way onto Indiegogo. But it is on Indiegogo, to be fair, and you know what Indiegogo can be like with prototypes and whatnot, right? Well, only 10 days later, a non-sponsored review popped up on arguably the biggest tech channel on the platform, Linus Tech Tips. He confirms that even though the GPD Win 2 wasn't the best when it comes to playing more modern AAA games, it can play them, but with frame drops as expected. Thankfully, it's more than capable at running emulators and less graphically intensive games too, which, let's be honest, is exactly what you would expect. There's no lying about what a system like this can do at this point in time. It's better than expectations, I'll give it that, but it's not as good as the Smach Z promises, is it? But hey, with all of these delays, the competition was getting mighty close. In February, the Smach Z team announced a collaboration with AMD in order to provide custom Ryzen V1000 embedded processors for the creation of the newly improved Smach device. A week or so later, the Smach team tried to calm down naysayers by confirming that the final product would be shown off the following month. And finally, we get another leak from a backer confirming that the release date will be May for backers and at the end of the year to the general public. We get to see a lovely animated video go up on the official Smach Z YouTube channel that shows the Smach Z running some pretty impressive games for the time. Of course, this is all CGI, but still, it gives the supporters hope as those new AMD chips allow it to be advertised as the most powerful handheld ever. It's then leaked from the forums that the delivery date has been moved to June, and that the prototype will be shown in April. Pre-orders opened up on the official Smach Z website to the eye-watering tune of $699. Now obviously this is very expensive, but again, this is the early days of anything like Steam Deck devices, so publications that were talking about this said that yes, it's expensive, but it's actually quite a good deal for the right sort of gamer. Anyway, remember that GPD Win 2? Sorry Smash fans, but it's just got released. Also, something else that's worth being brought up here isn't the fact that the device got shown off, got shipped out and got overall positive reviews again, but the Indiegogo campaign had a whole heap of updates, insane amounts to be quite frank, that constantly updated the backers before and after its release. A prime example on how you should run a campaign like this. Seriously, when you cover as many campaigns as I have, you start to notice the companies that turn crowdfunding campaigns into an absolute art form. And that's why this system and this campaign was so popular. And it's why they did it again. Yep, the very same month backers started getting their GPD Win 2s, the GPD Win Max was launched. And guess what? That was shipped out too, as were plenty of other campaigns as we got closer to the point where new reputable systems were getting announced every other month. And look, I'm not going to waste your time going through every single competitive Steam Deck-like device that was successful or launched and was positively reviewed. I just want to hit home how painful this must have been for backers that were one by one losing their blind support for the Smach Z team when every single other company was releasing theirs without any hiccups. Moving into June, we got to see the cheesiest and possibly cringiest trailer ever on the first day of E3 promoting the device. For me, this is the best thing the Smach Z team ever put out. It's so cringy, it's borderline brilliant. Anyway, here we are guys, E3 2018, the event where we are finally supposed to see the final product, except of course, we didn't. As it wasn't even at E3, it was at the hotel across the road with selected YouTubers and bloggers and other news folk being invited in to look at yet another non-finished product. Now, most of the people that were covering this were very positive about the device, and to be fair, why wouldn't they? This is a handheld system playing pretty impressive Steam games. What's not to love?
Well, like I said, it looks fantastic. I can't wait to play a little bit more with it here, to see what some gaming is like on it and be able to talk about that a little bit later.
Thankfully, we did have a couple of the more, not critical, more educated individuals on site who were able to spot the blatant scam that was going on here. One of those people was Michael Quesada, who managed to confirm with the team that they have now collected $500,000 through various means for the device that is now 4 years old, and so far all they had to show for that was a newfangled prototype that was connected to a PC. I'm sorry, what? Why would they even bother to show up and show this off? What you have here is obviously a screen connected to a laptop that has the ability to run games with the ripped up and ripped off Steam controller talking to the laptop as opposed to the device itself. It's quite possibly the most obvious fake stuff to happen in this entire timeline. It's worth checking out his video in full, and yes, auto-generated subtitles are available for those who don't speak Spanish, as he goes into detail about how they tried to justify the high price point, with their reason being that it's still going to be cheaper than buying the Nintendo Switch plus 5 full price games because cheap Steam games are cheaper, or something. Wait, what? They also tried to convince him that this will run better than a PlayStation 4. Remember, this was before the days of the PlayStation 5. All because it was sending the signal out to a 720p screen. Or what about the part where they tried to convince him that the system is still modular? However, if you want to upgrade the CPU, the GPU, or the RAM, they're all connected, and you will need to upgrade the whole lot together. What? It's all so bogus, and you really have to do some rather extreme mathematical gymnastics to make any sense of it. Thankfully for them, the Spanish video wasn't as widely spread as the English-speaking one, so it's business as usual. Moving into August, we get a big old update from Daniel Fernandez, the head honcho at the company, who gives updates on the unit itself and fights back about the investors that Stop, Drop and Retro brings to the table.
Hello everyone.
So, what's the problem here then? Well, according to that annoying YouTuber, Smash Drop and Retro, his latest discovery showed that the real parent company for the Smach Z was another company called Smash Inversions. This isn't exactly a big revelation or anything on its own, but one interesting thing that did come up here was that the president of that company was also the main investor that the Smash team promoted whilst the Kickstarter was live. In other words, this random dude here that was shown off during the campaign's life isn't just some random investor, he's the president of the company that's actually looking after the Smach Z. And even though they tried to fight back by saying he's not the president of the company, he's just a member of the board, that was lies too. He's definitely the president of the company that's looking after the Smach Z. Because documents prove it. He is the bloody president, for f***'s sake. Shout out to Stop Drop again for working this one out. It also states that several other grants have been issued to them, mostly from government officials, which I suppose does make sense. Going by the 500,000 euros that was previously talked about by that Spanish YouTuber, let's just hope that those government officials also don't get confused by your previous investors, eh? As we move into September, we got to see the Smach Z once again at the Tokyo Game Show 2018. And this time it was promised that we would see the device in its final working form, with no laptop connected this time. However, that wasn't the case. In fact, this was way worse. The blog Boiling Stream, which is run by one of the backers of the device, gave an update sharing his thoughts on the Smach Z from Tokyo Game Show 2018. Sadly for him, the machine was not functional. They had issues connecting the PCB to the screen apparently, but hey, he liked what he held and continued to praise the system.
While I am still cautious about the state of this project, meeting the guys behind the project in person gave some reassurance that this is probably not a scam, but a genuine project that should hit the market soonish. Let's look for more tangible demos in the next few months as they finalise that prototype.
They had the unit, but it didn't turn on. And on top of that, it had crooked buttons and a warped screen. Supposedly this was due to an error with the motherboard not connecting to the screen. Either way, it doesn't matter, as it simply was nothing. They might as well have just taken a wood carving of the console, because again, this is literally nothing. Later that month, the Smach Z team has started paying for Google Ads in order to get more people to sign up to their website. Thanks, backers. And then we get reports that that the Smach Z will start shipping this year in December of 2018. Don't forget, you can pre-order your own unit at 10% off on the website for a limited time. Uneducated news publications all over were urging you to do this very thing, as it was still such a steal.
Go!
In November, we finally got confirmation that the production will start at the beginning of 2019, and then at the beginning of 2019, it doesn't go into production. Surprise, surprise. However, we do get to see an updated video from the Smach Z team that's not filled with dubstep music, but it is still incredibly fake.
Hey, how are you? This is Daniel, CEO of Smach. We have been listening to your feedback, and even though this is still an alpha version, this is gonna be a video to clarify some questions that came up after posting the last gameplays. We haven't filled in those outside the backer forums, so this video is meant for everyone.
So, how is this fake exactly? Well, Dan here is showcasing the product in this unedited over-the-shoulder style video. He is of course doing this to presumably shut up the naysayers, no edits, no bullshit, just the system playing some games. And to further confirm that this isn't some kind of fake device that is nothing more than a cut-up controller sending a signal to a computer off-screen that is then sending the video footage back to the device, he goes to the Windows taskbar to show that the device is not connected to the internet. No weird streaming stuff going on here, right? Well, that's not what the comments section thinks. You see, when he goes to the Wi-Fi settings, it shows that there are 2 Wi-Fi connections. Firstly, why does a system like this need 2 Wi-Fi connections? And secondly, the icon at the bottom of the screen clearly shows that the Wi-Fi isn't off, it's on. He then turns it off before the screen conveniently blurs, and hey, you tell me, does it look like it goes back on before refocusing? Because it sure does to me. Have another look. Now, none of this confirms either way what the hell is going on here, but it's extremely bizarre behaviour to prove something that, in my opinion, completely disproves it. Moving into February, that Smach Z team themselves once again state that the Q1 2019 devices will start being produced and that the backers will get them in hand by Q2 2019. A couple of days later, we get to see videos of the system playing some more graphically intensive games, and the following month we get to see yet another leaked update from those Smash forums informing backers that, surprise, surprise, the system has been slightly pushed back, with the new delivery date to backers being Q2 to Q3 2019. Strangely enough, those officially uploaded videos of StarCraft and Cuphead released a couple of months ago might have just been fake, as in June of 2019, the device was seen in public again at E3 2019, and you'll never guess it, but the results were rather sluggish for high-end games, borderline unplayable apparently. However, later that month, in a surprising turn of events, the YouTuber The Forks actually did get a proper test unit. To date, this is the only Smach Z that we know of that is in the wild. Now, unfortunately, like other similar systems I've covered in the past, The Forks, who talked positively about the system in the first place, has now removed all Smach Z content from his channel, but I was able to find the unboxing. Yep, the unboxing was re-uploaded, and the general gist from this first and only review is that it's still very much a prototype. It's not the final product. As an example, some of the buttons, like the ones at the back of the unit, simply just do not function. The same goes for the SD card slot. It springs in and out as it should, but it's not connected to the board inside, so it didn't work either. Regardless, the Forks gave a fairly positive and well-rounded unboxing, making sure to include some 3D Mark test results and even showed the system running Doom. The problem was, to get it to this working state, the Forks had to really mess around with the BIOS and God knows whatever else, and do things that the average user would never wish to do. Of course, doing all this may appeal to some, but of course it wouldn't for the masses. Regardless, it was still not finished, and as stated, this is as far as it ever got. To this day, Fawkes is still the only person in the world that wasn't part of the team to own a Smach Z. A month later, and the device was shown off again at Gamescom, looking to be the same device from E3, and reports from backers who got to play it were fairly positive. Now, just to be clear, these reports have been shared by the Smach team themselves, so obviously they are going to be mostly positive, and in all fairness, I was unable to find any reports that stated otherwise. Well, except for the system shutting down unexpectedly and constantly throughout the day. Supposedly this was due to the single fan on the back of the device not being able to handle the long playtime at E3, and again this was something that the critics had long predicted and was now coming true at a public event. Remember that article from the blog The Boiling Point, run by an optimistic backer, released after last year's Tokyo Game Show, the game show that demoed a system that didn't even have a working screen? Well, he's back at Tokyo Game Show 2019, and boy oh boy does he have a few words to say to the haters.
We can finally put to rest the idea that the Smach Z portable gaming PC has been vaporware all along. I am glad to say that those people will all be proven wrong now, because this time around they had a fully working version of the Smach Z, and I had it in my own hands. How more real can this get?
He also confirmed that after speaking to Oscar, one of the Smach Z heads, he stated that backers will start to get their devices in October, aka the very next month. There you go, that'll shut up those naysayers. Turns out the Smach team do give plenty of updates, don't they? Well, a couple of days later, Smach Z themselves posted their last ever tweet and Facebook post. However, ignore all of that, as it's now time for some positive news. The website Comics Asylum got to interview Daniel Fernandez, who confirmed that the system will be shipped in 2019. And look, before continuing on, I just want to emphasize why I'm constantly bringing up every single instance that I can find, and you know there's more out there, of the date constantly changing. It's not to make them look unprofessional, they're doing a fine job of that themselves. It's to just emphasize how painful it must have been for the backers. The vast majority of these updates are coming from random websites who managed to somehow get an interview. The crowdfunded sites and Discord and the forum were hardly getting updated, resulting in those backers constantly having to look for new information themselves and then sharing these news updates with each other. It really was a massive struggle to back a campaign like this. Although, the very next month, they did get an official update, if the comments section on Reddit is anything to go by, as backers leaked that the device would now ship in December. Again, the very next month. They are literally just kicking that Smach Z down the road. 1 month to go, 1 month to go, 1 month to go by this point, aren't they? Yep, because 9 days later, another interview popped up that confirmed that the device would be shipped to backers in the first quarter of 2020. Again, this is not an official update. The official update came in only 2 weeks earlier. Backers were furious, sharing this information between each other, and as that information spread, another backer shared a private conversation that they had had with the Smach Z team only 3 days earlier that still confirmed that it was going to be released the very next month. What the hell? This confusion continues on Discord as another backer shares their messages, which also confirms that the handhelds will be shipped in December, with Kickstarter backers coming first, then Indiegogo backers, then Indiegogo pre-orders, and finally all pre-orders on the website. Backers were also able to work out, based on previous updates, the location of their headquarters that didn't exactly look to have anyone inside by this point. Yet another interview confirms that backers will get units very soon, 2,500 backers specifically, and everyone else will get theirs next year, further confirming that they will be sent out before the end of the year, of which there are only 20 days left. As you would expect, this resulted in the backers on Discord getting more and more worried that they wouldn't get an update, let alone the system, before the year was out. And then, all of a sudden, on the 31st of December 2019, they finally got an update, which was nothing more than a delay for another couple of months. Thankfully, some backers that were being persistent on getting refunds, constantly begging to get their money back, did get an email asking for an absurd amount of banking information in order to process refunds. And as great as this sounds, it was more than likely just a way to shut up the loud and very angry backers. As you know, the only real way to get decent updates officially was via the locked off forums. Turns out, if you filled in this information to get a refund, then your access to those forums would get revoked instantly, and there was just no way to get updates on the system or your pending refund. You still had to hope and pray you was one of the lucky few that got their money back. Either way, whilst you waited, you were now sitting in the dark with no way of contacting them. Another interview pops up which claims that these 2,500 promised units from I don't even know how long ago are finally getting shipped out. We also get confirmation that the company had raised 3.3 million euros for the project and a closed 10 million euro budget as the device continues production. Which is great if true, but obviously it wasn't, as only a few days later brand new job listings had popped up for the Smash team. This is troublesome, as not only should the software be long finished on the Smach Z, considering they're supposedly getting shipped out already, but the wording on the job listing is word for word the same as a job listing that was seen in October the previous year, after Carlos Dominguez left the same role at this time. This potentially proves that no one had filled his role since his departure. Obviously, a leaked update comes from locked off forums denying the job applications and letting backers know that they are aiming to release the system that again was already reported to be shipping out between January and February. And with it being the last day of January, good luck with that. They also offer the opportunity to get more refunds. I wonder why. Okay, so this part isn't really an update, but it does go to show how painful it must have been to be a backer. Check this out.
I have emailed, but I'll post it here too. Project is so overdue that I've gone from being in my 20s to now my 30s, and life's responsibilities mean that I simply haven't time for video games anymore, much less one that, if competitors' attempts and those of other startups are anything to go by, will either have a catastrophic hardware or software failure.
The Spanish podcast The Vandal were able to go and check out the Smach Z prototype, finally a independent third party playing with the device, and the feedback wasn't great. Their opinion is that the device has become obsolete due to the time it's taken to get the system out. They complain about the noise of the fan when they tested 2016's Doom. According to them, it was so loud that it became annoying to use. The analog triggers clicked and the whole system felt very cheap and poorly constructed. The L1 and R1 buttons were simply uncomfortable. The original Steam controller that the system ripped up for its prototype and of course was heavily based upon was far more responsive. And as for Smach Z's new version of Rombio's click-arm modular technology, it was confirmed that upgrades will require users to send their Smach Z's back to the Smach Z company in order to upgrade components like the processor and the motherboard. Oh my god, this is such a joke. And finally, they once again pushed that 2,500 unit figure, confirming backers will be receiving their devices first. When exactly? Well, it's confirmed by yet another interview that they should be shipped out within a couple of months. So much for that January and February timeline, eh? An angry backer who was a big supporter in the early days shows a fairly big update from the Smash team that shows that this device has had molding issues and therefore will require the handheld molding to be completely redone. And as this is during COVID, as well as the recent Chinese New Year, this will delay the device indefinitely. Now, obviously, this molding issue was met with a whole heap of skepticism. Firstly, how was it not spotted before? And if 2,500 cases have been made, this should only really be an issue on a small portion of the cases. Otherwise, it would have been a design flaw that could have easily been picked up before going into production. In other words, and I'm sure this will come to the surprise of no one, the Smash team are talking smack. That would have worked better if it was the Smack team. The Smack team are talking smack. It was a crap joke regardless. The system is so delayed at this point that backers start to beg the company to send them the device with that minor defect, as it is. And obviously, Smash ignored every single one of those requests. And then, on April Fool's Day 2020, the Smach Z team give an update saying that they're going to have a 2-week break. They're doing this because, you guessed it, it's Kick Scammers' greatest excuse. And because of that blasted this means that they're unable to provide refunds for some reason. It's an absolute joke. Despite backers waiting on an update that's never going to come, they noticed that the main Smach Z website had changed the pre-order delivery date to 2020. Happy 3 years late, everyone! Another pointless update is sent out to backers in June saying that they're still working on things with 0 updates on shipping and giving vague excuses as to why the device is still not finished. There is literally nothing of note here at all. Thankfully, it's confirmed by a few of the more persistent backers that some refunds are finally starting to not only get accepted, but actually fulfilled. And then in July it was leaked on Discord that a forum update had come in informing backers that the plastics had finally come back and that they are finally happy with them, meaning that they're finally able to start shipping out the devices very soon. We get another leaked DM from an eager backer confirming that the Smash team is organising a new production and will be releasing new dates soon. Later in August, it's discovered that the website has changed its $10 pre-order reserve to only accept BitPay and Stripe, which should stop those annoying credit card chargebacks now, shouldn't it? Speaking of refunds, not everyone was lucky enough to get one, as some backers reported that they would get responses claiming that the Smach Z team could not afford to give any more refunds, and that they would just have to wait until the product had been shipped out before the team had the ability to issue any more, supposedly within the following months of 2020. Is that the latest date, actually? Who cares at this point? The whole thing is absolutely embarrassing. News dwindles down to practically nothing, and all responses to emails and comments completely stop until the following year. Yep, welcome to 2021, everyone. Backers who were still waiting for their Smach Zs or any decent update started spreading the news of this website that posted a scathing timeline series of events. It reported on the near constant silence that backers had been forced to deal with for the best part of half a year. And not to jump ahead, but a later published article released by the same Notebook Check news website explained that the Smach Z team reached out in January of 2021 to let them know that final units are shipping soon, blaming COVID for the delays and offering the news site the ability to email over any questions they had, to which they would happily respond. Notebook Check took them up on their offer and did that very thing. They sent over a whole heap of questions to the Smach Z team and never heard anything back. Noticing that backers are getting more and more wound up, the company puts out an update apologising that no new updates have been made in this backers only newsletter, and once again they blame COVID for the delays, along with the plastic moulds not being to their standard, which, if you remember, in a previous update they'd said they'd already got them all fixed. Look, if you're going to be a liar, you've got to have a good memory. Either way, they apparently still need to be redone, and this would be the final step. So in order to get those done as quickly as possible, they decided to bring the molds to Spain so that they could keep a closer eye on things. They also showed off the official carry case in more detail too, for anyone that cared. It's also worth pointing out that even though the device had passed CE certification, supposedly the charger had not, and now this is the latest reason for the delays. Which finally brings us to May 2021. The company had been super quiet for a good year or so by this point, and therefore the exhausted backers were excited to get an update from the company. However, it wasn't the update they wanted to read.
Today we have tough news to share with you, and we think it's better for everyone to be as clear as possible from the very first paragraph. We have lost the private inversion investment that was sustaining this project, and as a consequence, we might soon enter bankruptcy.
Yep, the time was up for the Smach Z. The update goes into detail about how successful they were, the most successful ever in Spain, supposedly. Not sure you can call a failed project a success, but okay. They also continued to blame COVID, as you do, and finally they had issues with the charger and the batteries overheating on all 200 units that got made.
We are all well aware that the scope of the project was too ambitious for us, way more than we anticipated. The project started off on the wrong foot. As we were scammed by ImasD, the lawsuit is still ongoing, forcing us to replan everything from scratch and assume command of the project. With the handicap of having $200,000 less that was in ImasD's bank. We know we have failed, over and over, to commit to the communication goals we were stating. We are very sorry for that. We understand that from your point of view, you will be angry with us. We can only say that we did all we could with the best intentions and efforts. We will continue to inform you about the processes, the evolution of the situation, and possible solutions. Please feel free to send proposals or ideas that you may have to save the project. We really hope that along the way, we have achieved to share some of our passion and joy with all of you. Even more than ever, thank you all for your support, your trust, and your patience. Smach Team.
And that was the last we ever heard of them. Until they showed up a year later promoting some crappy NFT game. Look, if you want my opinion on this whole thing, my Jerry's final thoughts, if you will, as to whether this whole thing was a scam or not, it really does depend on your definition of a scam. For me, yes, 100% it's a scam. The only time it wasn't a scam was when one of these dudes thought to themselves, wouldn't it be cool if someone made a portable steam machine? That's where this whole thing should have ended. But of course they decided to rip off the Steam Machine name, make some fake CGI videos, and worst of all, pretend to know what the hell they were doing. Again, these are game developers, not hardware developers. Of course, they're not fully to blame. If everything we heard is true about the relationship between the Smash team and the Rombio team, then Rombio are fully deserving of plenty of finger pointing as they took Smach Z up the garden path before Smach Z had the chance to do the same thing to their backers. And of course, since then, it's been lie after lie after lie, whilst constantly dangling the electric carrot in front of the backers, reminding them that we are close, followed by it's coming next month. Honestly, it is on loop with every single update and interview. So yeah, with all of this collected information, in my opinion, it was a scam. Sure, it might not have started like that, that might not have been the original vision, but then they went hardcore with the lying, and yes, it was a scam. But at the end of the day, from the beginning, when they borderline ripped off Steam, to the final years where they constantly kicked the can down the road, waiting for a miracle to randomly happen, and most damning of all, silencing anyone that isn't part of the Smash Mafia, how long can you, the backer, hold on to that tiny thread of, well, it probably didn't start off as a scam? Because when you put it all together, you've got to question whether this was the plan all along. Hey there guys, thanks for checking out the video, and firstly, before continuing on, sorry it's taken so long to release a video on the channel. It's been a hot minute, and the reason for that is because these videos take an extreme amount of time. I wasn't expecting this particular one to take quite as long as it did, because there's a lot of articles out there, there's a lot of conversation about this, but no, this one did take an incredible amount of time, having to go through all of the comments and all of the different areas and the discords and all that sort of stuff to eventually bring together a good timeline series of events. And on top of that, as you can imagine, editing a video like this, all the different edit files I'll need to be able to get the camera to zoom in on the TV that's already got an edited video inside of it, all that sort of stuff takes an extreme amount of time. But hey, I never rush this stuff, and I always want to release the best quality videos that I possibly can, and that's what you've just seen there. So thank you all so much. Thanks to the sponsor for this video, Trainwell, and thank you to all of my Patrons and YouTube members that allow me to take time to create this sort of content. I'm so happy I'm not a channel that has to rush out content because, to make ends meet. Like, it's because of you guys that I'm actually able to really put the effort into videos like this, and I can't thank you enough. Before we get to my Patrons and YouTube members, I want to give a massive shout out to I want to give out a massive shout out to the people that actually helped with the voiceovers for this video. We got Vitas Varnes there, we got Joey Freeze, Grizzly Krieden, we've got Akatimo84, Goldfish on Games, Control Alt Reese, What Ho Snorkers, and Dudley of Yesterzine, and of course Stop, Drop, and Retro also provided his voice. I wonder how many people before they got to this part spotted that, hang on, he's the voice of the scammers, you know. I had to get him involved. Obviously he's covered this for the longest time, and it's great to finally put a big bow on this whole thing, and to have him help out. So that was awesome. Anyway, like I said, this is the part of the video I'd like to give a massive shout out to all of the Patreons and YouTube members. They got to see this video early, they get access to the password zone, get their names shown at the bottom of the screen, and loads of other cool things, secret Discord rooms, exclusive videos, all that jazz. If you want to get your name shouted out like all the ones I'm about to shout out here and the names you see down there, then please do consider becoming a Patreon and YouTube member yourself. You can become both if you want. Extra big shout outs going to Keiju Samurai 1985, Boots and Pup, The Sneaky Ferret, Vitas Varnes, James, The Action Saxon, Roll VP, Jay's Manchild, Mike Fallon, Nicholas Bertner, Chev Matic, Jabba Al Aiden, Benjamin Guy, Richard Alderjic, Shadow Dragon, Dina, Ye Old Hamburglar, Jeff Mianowski, Bram Perez, Conrad Constantine, Andrew Dalton, Retro to Next Gen aka Lou, Paul Float, Ryan Burford, Casey Sample, Sir Nilsson, VPS Data, Derek Huda, Akatimo 84, Matt Jackson, Ian Quell, Arista, Dina81, Mind of the Unsane, and Vike Echo. Thank you guys so much for your support, and once again thank you to Trainwell for sponsoring this video. Like I said, if you guys want to check out do a little 14-day fitness thing for free with a personal trainer all on the app, then please click that link down below. It's what I've done, and I'm actually feeling pretty damn good for it. But until next time, guys, this is DJ Slope signing out, and hopefully I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.